Well, another NASCAR Cup Series season is in the books. Joey Logano took home his third Cup title on Sunday with the win at Phoenix. Here to break down how the numbers were this season for NASCAR and what to expect next season with a new deal. Adam Stern, our resident motorsports expert, everything on four wheels. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Two wheels too.
Two wheels, that's right. You know, I cannot ignore MotoGP, of course. Shame on me for ignoring the motorcycles. But let's keep the focus here on NASCAR, Adam. The season wrapped up with just under 3 million viewers, I guess, for that race in Phoenix. That was flat. But the impressive thing for me is over the course of the season, we're talking across Fox Sports and NBC Sports for the season, they actually saw an uptick, and that's after a rainout for Daytona. And I jinxed it. We had Steve Phelps on this pod, and I talked about, what's going to happen if, there's rain for Daytona. So I take full responsibility. Steve, if you're listening, sorry for that, for jinxing it and bringing rain to Daytona. But how big of a feat was it for NASCAR to dig out of that hole with the rain for Daytona and see an uptick in 24?
Yeah, Austin, I think NASCAR's going to have to be pretty pleased with it. We'll have to dig through the history books, but it's definitely pretty rare, if not unprecedented, for a Daytona 500 to get rained out and then for NASCAR to end up for the season. Typically, it's said in NASCAR kind of logic that how Daytona goes, so goes the season. An event like that gets rained out, usually they end up being down somewhere or another. So they kind of have some things in the past couple of years that have allowed it to be a little bit easier. Their average viewership is not quite as high as it once was, 10, 15 years ago. So that makes it a little bit easier now. But nonetheless, still extremely impressive for them to be able to pull it off. And if you take a step back and look at what they've been doing in the past couple of years, in 2023, they had to negotiate their major new media rights deals. This year, they were negotiating with their teams about a new charter agreement. Obviously, that second part hasn't gone perfectly. But overall, they've been having major deals they've been having to negotiate while trying to keep their viewership going, which is not easy when you have cable viewership declining in terms of the subs, things like that. So overall, I think they've got to be pretty pleased with how things turned out. To be up 1% for the season and only down a couple percent from 2022 when they had 3 million viewers. So to be still 2.9 million viewers, right near that 3 million viewer mark, I think they got to be pretty pleased.
Yeah, Adam, you talk about the comparisons to where it was 10, 15 years ago. Of course, it had a slide over a number of years. But I think NASCAR is really, especially the Cup Series we're talking about here, has very comfortably settled into around 3 million viewers on average for a race over the course of what is a really long season, a really stable media property. That's why despite some of those declines over the past years, they were able to get an uptick in the rights fee in their most recent negotiations. But this season, around 2.9 million viewers for the season, up 1% from last year, but like you alluded to, down around 4 or 5% from 2022. You can count on this property to deliver week in and week out. And if you're settling in around 3 million viewers, that's still around twice what F1 is going to average over the course of its season.
Their playoffs are during the NFL season. So to be able to deliver, 2.5, 3 million viewers for an event that's going head-to-head versus football, that's something that very few sports properties can do. And so that's why, they, like you said, they still got a 40% increase in their media rights deal for 2025 through 2031.
Yeah, so we bring up this new media rights deal. This is a 7-year deal, $7.7 billion across Fox, NBC, Amazon, and Warner Bros. Discovery, and that kicks in next year. Adam, what are you looking for next season with this new deal?
Yeah, what's going to be interesting, Molly, is they're going from 2 domestic media rights partners to 5 next year for NASCAR. That's a huge increase, and while it's gotten them a 40% increase in their media rights fees, it's going to be a little bit more confusing now for their fans as a result of having their content spread across a lot of different channels. So one thing I'm looking out for to start is the promotion. How heavily are they going to promote where everything is? It's a little bit intricate, not even just the races, but practice, qualifying will be on different channels, different platforms at times. They're going to have to really work on that. I'm also looking out for innovation, bringing in Amazon for the first time to the sport, having a streaming partner for the first time in this way to the sport. There's a lot of talk from people I know who are working on that deal already that Amazon and Prime Video are going to be quite innovative with how they're going to cover the sport. So I think a lot of people are looking out for that, not just in terms of production, but also in terms of sponsorship. NASCAR has a ton of sponsors. The teams have a ton of sponsors. Amazon sells tons of products to Americans and people all around the world. So is there a way to integrate that deeper in a way that hasn't been done in the sport before? And the final thing I'm looking out for is talent changes. There's a lot of talent changes that are going on as a result of the fact that they're going from 2 to 5. Some networks are slimming down, like the incumbents, Fox. They dropped their studio show, Race Hub, and some people are being let go as a result in terms of their talent. Some of those people are going to end up at the other networks that are now adding on, like Prime Video and WBD. So that's another thing we'll be looking out for heading into 2025.
And it's another sports property for WBD, which has to be a good thing for them after losing the NBA. And as we talked about with that viewership, it's going to drive consistent numbers to those networks.
Yeah, I think WBD, what they've done since they've lost the NBA has been pretty remarkable to a certain degree. They've added up so many different properties. And yeah, the NBA is kind of, basketball, you could say, is the second biggest sport in America after football. So it's a huge loss, no doubt, with the NBA. But what they've been able to do with adding college football, NASCAR, some various properties here and there, it's been quite impressive, and it's going to help them make up for that loss, I feel like.
Yep, unrivaled French Open. I mean, I know we're going to have NASCAR's Brian Herbst. He's in charge of the media over there at NASCAR. He's going to be on a panel with me in New York next week at our Media Innovators event. Going to talk to him a lot about that as well. Adam, I'm going to ask you real quick, though, to get you out of here on this. Switch hats a little bit. You're going to be in Texas, in Arlington, this weekend for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. What are you expecting from that from a media perspective? What is it going to do for Netflix?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. We were talking to our managing editor of The Daily, Rick Ellington, earlier, and he said his son is interested in watching the fight. So it's just a great example of how Jake Paul...
That prime energy. All those kids drinking that prime energy drink.
Yeah, Jake Paul, of course, is very popular with younger generations, and Mike Tyson's one of the biggest names in fighting history. So talking to Nikiza Badarian of Most Valuable Promotions, the co-founder, he said they believe this fight will appeal to as many as 6 generations, and they're hoping that this is going to top the viewership for the Peacock game NFL earlier this year that got about 23 million viewers. We've spoken to some folks who are a little bit more bearish than that, so we'll have to see who's right.
Well, everything that happens with 4 wheels, 2 wheels, and 2 gloves, Adam Stern, appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you.